Are ethics and hacking mutually exclusive? Is there a possibility they could go together? The answer is absolutely yes, but I wanted to also share with you some ideas that will keep you out of trouble. The concept of hacking refers to taking advantage of some type of system vulnerability and usually to compromise security. And oftentimes that's accomplished by manipulating or modifying a system or an application to have it respond in a non-expected way or a non-intentional way. For example, having a network topology that's willing to advertise itself to the hacker who's now discovering how your topology looks. Or perhaps discovering the exact version of the operating system that you're running on your server or on your desktops, with the intent to further exploit or take advantage of vulnerabilities in that specific operating system. A black hat is a person who has some really amazing computer skills, but unfortunately is resorting to malicious or destructive activities that are not lawful. Another classification is a white hat, and a white hat would also have some really amazing skills. However, instead of using those skills for unauthorized or illegal activities, they're using them for defensive purposes. So for example, a security consultant who does penetration testing for huge companies, who gets signed authorization before he or she starts, also has identified the scope of what's allowed to be tested, and has that in writing, and also signs a non-disclosure agreement. That type of security consultant would be considered to be a white hat, a good guy. The next classification is a gray hat. And that would be a person who works offensively as well as defensively in the security arena, and because they may cross the line occasionally, they would not be considered a black hat or a white hat because they go both ways. Another classification is a suicide hacker. Let's say that Bob discovers through some means that the company is downsizing in a few weeks and his job is going to be terminated, and Bob is upset, disgruntled. So before Bob leaves the company, he is going to plant some logic bombs that are going to cause disruption of service at some future point. Maybe he's going to plant some Trojan horses and some malware. Maybe some backdoors that would provide access later after he's fired. And to top it off, he's so upset in the heat of the moment that he just doesn't care if he gets caught. That would be an example of a suicide hacker, where they're throwing caution to the wind and don't care if they get caught. They're not worried about jail time or other kind of punishment. They're just going to go ahead and do it. Another classification for hackers is called a script kiddie, which is effectively an unskilled hacker who takes advantage of a system by running scripts or tools or software that were developed by somebody else. Now, quite frankly, most of the tools that you and I are going to learn about in this course are made by somebody else. We're not writing our own code. However, the scary thing is that virtually anybody can download a tool, click a button, and have that tool launch an attack. And that would include an experienced analyst as well as somebody who's brand new. And generally speaking, when somebody calls somebody else a script kiddie, it's usually not a compliment. It usually implies an unskilled hacker. Another hacker class is a cyber terrorist, which represent people with a huge range of abilities and skills, and they can be motivated by religious or political beliefs to create fear by huge disruption of service of computers and systems of networks. Another classification would be a state-sponsored hacker. And this would be an individual or group of individuals who are employed by a government or an entity such as a government to break into, to penetrate and gain top secret info, or perhaps just to damage or place bad information in other types of systems, usually in other governments. And as cyber warfare heats up and increases, the number of state-sponsored hackers is also increasing. And then the last one I want to chat about with you for a moment is a hacktivist. And an example of a hacktivist would be a person who is driven by a political agenda. And perhaps they want to deface or disable a website or embarrass somebody to promote their cause. Now, I've got two questions for you regarding these classes of hackers. Question number one, is it possible that an individual may be in more than one of these classes at any given time? For example, let's say we have a user like Bob who's disgruntled and he doesn't care if he gets caught. And he's also going to use some tools that maybe he doesn't completely understand that he downloaded from the internet and is simply going to place or run on the network. And that's a simple example of how an individual could fit into two or more categories. And my second question for you, my friend, is which of these classes of attackers or hackers could, either through intention or accidentally, land up in really hot water and possibly be put in jail or fined or both due to their activities? And the answer to that question is that any one of these classes of attackers and hackers could end up in very serious trouble if they're not mindful and careful about the tools that they're using. including a white hat who perhaps uses the tool and steps outside the boundaries of his authorized penetration testing, or brings the system down because he was accidentally doing penetration testing beyond the scope of what the agreement was. So the point I want to drive home is that you need to be very careful in never using any of the tools that we're going to discuss or cover in this course in any type of unauthorized or unethical or illegal manner. And one of the reasons I point out the cautions there is because most courses on security, for example, courses that talk about Palo Alto firewalls or Cisco security products or Checkpoint, those types of traditional classes are focused on securing the network, which would include controls such as technical controls like access control lists, administrative controls like rotation or separation of duties, and physical controls like locks and stuff like that. And that security would also include things like firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention systems, policies, risk analysis, etc., etc., etc. And the reason that the hacking course is significantly different is that in a hacking course, we're really focused on the dark side of the attack tools and methodologies that an attacker would be using. For example, doing reconnaissance, social engineering, system hacking, phishing, SQL injection, etc. And the point I'm going to re-emphasize regarding every single video in this entire course is that although we are focusing on discovering and demonstrating the tools that hackers may use, you need to make sure that you are never using any of these tools in any unauthorized or illegal ways. And if there comes a time when you're not quite sure if a tool is going to be ethical or illegal to be used in the situation you want to use it, don't use it. Err on the side of caution. So in this course, we're going to focus on the perspective of the hacker so that we can be aware of the methods that they're going to use for reconnaissance and compromise. And then with that awareness, hopefully we can also then apply various countermeasures to counteract some of those vulnerabilities. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.